thou shalt not use scripts. Go ahead and
which,
dive into that one for me.
Leads right into from what you were just talking about, which is letting them talk. There is a myth out there. We need to do some myth busting today on Real Estate Growth Hackers. And that is, we need to bust this myth wide open that there exists this book of scripts. Like in every situation, you will have every answer, the perfect words, the perfect response for every opportunity in the real estate business. No, it doesn't exist because there's no cookie. It's not a cookie cutter situation. The people are different. They're in different areas of, different parts of their life. They're looking for different things. They have different personalities. It's like you said, one person may look at a home and say, oh, and the other one's, this is exactly what I was looking for. Great. Okay. You want to be in the moment, be asking those questions, as you mentioned, listening to what they say. And the only way to do that is by being focused, being present, and being 100% giving them your full attention.
You are listening to the Real Estate Growth Hackers Show.
Welcome to the Real Estate Growth Hackers Show. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Roseann about showing superpowers. So let's go ahead and dive right into that. So today I've got Roseann Galvin with me. She is the author of Showing Superpower, the Real Estate Agent's Guide to Creating Bespoke Property Presentations, Faster Commissions, and Lifelong Clients. So I'm excited to dive in and talk with you today. We're going to be talking about 3 of the Showing Superpowers that you cover in your book. So, people will have to go through and get the rest of them. But yeah, let's dive in. Tell me a little bit, Roseann, about your history. How did this book come about? Why did you write it? And what led up to ultimately the creation of this book?
Sure, Zach. My history goes back as far as it could possibly go back, and that is to the very, very beginning. I was actually born into a real estate family. My parents are immigrants, and when you don't have a lot, one of the reasons why I'm so bullish about real estate is you can start with a very low barrier to entry, right? So they came in and they had to hit the ground running and make a life for themselves, and they found real estate. And it's been a great marriage for them between themselves and also between them and real estate. And nice. They had, like you and I, they also had 5 kids. They're in the 5 kids club. And when you do that, nice. What do you do? Well, there's not a lot of us in this. They put us to work, right? So early on, we learned about cleaning rentals, and that wasn't very fun. And I didn't, I wasn't really into that. I thought I would like painting, and painting can be very boring. But the one part I gravitated towards really early on was answering the phones. This was back in the day before you had your phone with you all the time. There was a phone that actually rang. Not all of our listeners will understand that, but phone rang and you had to get it answered, right? And if they were out showing properties for rent or for sale, nobody would answer the phone. So early on, I learned how to take a good message, be cordial on the phone. And then that moved up to, I did a lot of many years leasing. So I worked in leasing, and I loved the showing part. Just the idea of getting to know people, getting to know a property, figuring out where those 2 things meet, and what is appealing about a specific property to that specific buyer. So that was always my go-to, all through college, grad school. That was always the way to make some money on the side. It was leasing. And like a lot of people, I think, that are born into any business, no matter whether it's real estate or, they're peanut farmers, you want to do anything but what you're thinking, right? So I was determined I was going to get out. So I did. I pursued a education in communications. I have a master's degree in communications, and I went to work initially in radio, which I loved. But I realized early on that wasn't going to pay the bills if I wanted to have 5 kids. So I started working in training, and I've worked with a lot of sales teams and presentations, communications, that sort of thing. And I love sales. I love sales. I love salespeople. And whether they're selling, Pepsi or computers, the sales exchange is very similar. The components are the same, right? So I thought, okay, this is great. And in the meantime, because I had a lot of contacts in the real estate industry, I would do some training just on the side with that. but I always loved that, right? So I love everything about homes, and in the same time, one of my weird passions was checking out homes. I was the permanent looky-loo, right?
Right. I
So,
don't
like,
even I don't even know if that's all that weird, right? I feel like that's pretty common. I mean, shoot, there's an open house. People love just going
you
to
just
check
come
those
by,
out, right?
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
It was probably a little bit weird because I started, when I was not a lot of my, 19-year-old friends were doing that, but I did between like
Right.
19 and 29. I was determined to see, I lived at this little neighborhood. I was determined to see every home in that
Right.
neighborhood. And I would literally be like, oh, I hope they sell soon because I need to get in there, a little bit obsessive. But in the meantime, because I would go to all these open houses, I would see so many missed selling opportunities.
Right.
Go in and they're super cordial and they're great and they have such beautiful materials and all that. And they hand me those over so proudly and take a look around and let me know if you have any questions. Wah, wah, wah. Like, ah! So
Right.
that was like, okay, there needs to be something here. So in the meantime, I just sort of always had it in my head. I would work with some real estate groups, always have really good traction with that, and kept going, kind of doing that and doing that. And then COVID hits, right? And
Right.
I have 5 kids in my home.
Right.
So, whoa. So it's time to put all of this in writing, which is what I did. A lot of it
Nice.
comes from stuff that my dad, frankly, taught me, about really
Right.
connecting people and properties. So that's where I just decided, okay, I'm going to put it all out there, put it in a book. I made an ebook and an audio and just, put it there because I want it there for not only people who I think can benefit from it, but also for my kids who, believe it or not, a couple of them are interested in real estate, right? So great.
Right. Right.
Put it out there. And I feel like because there's no barrier to entry. I feel like this is a career for so many different types of people.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's this idea out there that you have to be, a supermodel and you have to be super extroverted and all of these things to be, Selling Sunset comes to mind, right? Well,
Right.
Beautiful, great. That's lovely to watch. But the reality is most people want to make their biggest buying decision with someone who listens to them,
Right.
Who's someone who can relate to them, who's someone who they're not embarrassed to say, hey, here's my budget. It may not be the million, who cares, right? But I want to empower people to be able to bring their best self out so they can connect with their prospects in the long run and be in the game for the long, the churn rate is so sad. People go into the business with, I'm going to get I'm going to sign on with the company that promises me the world. And they've got a formula. It's add water and just keep going. It doesn't work that way, as you know, Zach, right? You don't get real estate. You don't hack your real estate growth by doing what everybody else does. Right. And that's, sort of this pervasive myth that there's a formula and there's not.
Yes.
There's not a formula to people. Like they're all so different. So
exactly. And man, that's one of the biggest things that I like to talk to people about too, is the reality of there is nearly an infinite number of ways to be successful in real estate, right? There's a fit for every personality. And one of the concepts that I talk about is the 4-agent archetypes, where people actually, you could group marketing activities into different buckets, from networking to prospecting to the traditional like a lead capture sort of design, to what I would more so call marketing, which is more like education and getting information out there where you're attracting people to you. But and then like everything fits into that. But the reality is that you don't have to do all of them. Right. No. And you can mix and match, and you can figure out what fits for you. And a lot of people tend to lean toward one or another, but they might use a small mix of the other ones that maybe are less their strength. But yeah, no. So I'm completely with you. I think one of the big myths in this industry is that there is an exact right way, or there is a best way to do it. And most of the time, it's really a matter of like, who are you? What's your strength? What's your personality? And lean into that and leverage the assets that you have. You mentioned people have this perception of like, you have to be the supermodel or you have to be extroverted. It's like, sure, if you're extroverted, if you're the supermodel, use your assets, right? Like,
absolutely, go for
use
it.
what you got. Exactly. But for every person that is successful kind of in that vein, there's another person who's behind the computer and just following up relentlessly via phone and email and whatnot to make sure that they're getting in contact with people. And then there's the person that's pretty much only ever just out at networking events or meeting the parents at the soccer game or that sort of thing in terms of how they're finding people. So yeah, I'm completely with you. I love that idea. So in that vein, let's talk about these commandments that you got in your book. Right. Let's talk about how people, can leverage what you've learned that has worked for you and what you've seen and some of these opportunities, especially when it comes to showing and the superpowers there. So we're going to be diving into 3 commandments today. Let's go ahead and kick it off. So the first one that you've told me about is thou shalt not lead tours. Okay. So tell me about that. What does that mean? And let's dive into it.
Okay. So, Zach, you toured the country and you've probably gone to some monument, right? And you've had a tour guide. So think of that dynamic, right? You're walking along, you're following the tour guide. The tour guide's in the front and you're behind, and you might have a little bit of side conversation with your family, but in general, the tour guide is doing all of the talking. And you are doing the gawking, right? You're looking at, and you might remember some odd, they tell you some sort of fun fact and you're going to remember the fun fact. But in general, the action is happening at the front and it's all driven by the tour guide. Right. And you are a passive observer. And they're doing what I like to, say is what you're doing right now, which is the point and nod. Like they point and you nod, right? right. So, this home is an open concept. Okay. And in the primary bathroom, we've got this lovely marble tub. And you might have a little side conversation, but you're kind of hushed because that person is the tour guide and they're kind of the know all, end all, be all, right? They are the authority. And you are less than that. And that is a dynamic that needs to change because what we want to do is rethink that the person who is on the tour, your buyers, your prospects, they are the authority because they know how they live or how they want to live and what the space that they're looking for contains. So you want to shift that all back to you're engaging them. Let them talk about, what are they looking for in the living room? And some of this is stuff you do ahead of time. You're doing your homework, but you're going to let them be the one that they have all the answers. They know what they're looking for. It's for you to draw out of them and you to be the one, okay, all right, taking some notes because you're going to look for that property that is going to fit that for them. Or if they're, when you're on the tour, listen to what they say, what the comments, and I actually encourage people, write down exactly the words that they use. If they call the entryway, the foyer, you are going to call that the foyer. You're not going, use their terms, right? Everything is related to them. They're in charge. You're not pointing you're getting them to interact with the space as well. You want them to touch, you can say to them, go ahead and, run your hand across that quartz countertop, nice and smooth, you getting them to interact with the space by pointing, by you taking up space, say, oh, think about how your couch will look in this living room along this wall. Oh, all of a sudden we're doing what I call the mental movement. And that is we're starting to think, as I'm saying, the buyer is starting to think of their couch in that living room. Now they're trying it out, right? Now they're the ones in charge so that they have to visualize what life will be in this particular property. And the way you do that is by engaging them, having them take the lead. You're just there to accompany them. You're the backup singers. They are the lead singers.
Right. One of the ways that I like to talk about how people can, sort of analyze what they're doing on their own and see if they're going down that vein is, how many statements are you saying versus how many questions are you asking? Right. Because if you're asking questions, you're expecting a response and you're expecting engagement. Right. But if you're just saying a statement, then just like you said, it's right. Here is this thing. Oh, okay. Okay. Or here is this thing. Okay. But whereas when you ask a question, you say, hey, this is a fairly open concept, open living room. Is that something that you're wanting? Is that a feature that you guys were looking for? Now you get the opportunity to get that interaction and actually bring them up with you, where you get the information that you need to help connect them to the home that they ultimately want, right? So yeah, I think that's just that simple act of switching from statements to questions as much as possible. It's one of the easiest ways. Like, I know we often hear people, talk about the idea that you should be listening more than you're talking in these sort of interactions. But it can be hard to necessarily just do that, to just figure out, well, how do I listen more? And so by switching to, actually asking more questions, then you're able to really change that dynamic and make it so that you're doing more of the listening rather than the talking. Because if you ask a question, the next step is to stop and listen, right? And then you could keep asking questions based on what they say in order to keep the conversation going.
I like the way, Zach, that you mentioned questions, because questions require listening. It's one thing to ask questions, right, but it's another thing to take the time and to listen to the answers, and right, even take the next step forward, really using your superpower. Take some notes. It's perfectly okay to say, hey, I just want to make sure I capture things. You don't have to, stop, write everything word for word. But if somebody brings up, the proximity to a dog park 3 times, that is a key selling feature for you. So you just want to write dog park on your notes. So, and it goes back to you using their terms, how they call, different rooms, whatever they call, you want to talk in their terms. So if you're asking questions, you're ahead of the game, and then finish it by listening to the answers and doing something with that information, specifically using it to present the property in their terms.
I think, and part of what's so important about this to me is, like, we come into everything with our own biases, right? Like you have your preferences, I have my preferences, and there isn't necessarily a good or bad about that. Somebody else may love something that you think is horrible and would never want at all. And it can be really hard if all we're doing is we're talking about, oh, like, look at this horrible thing. But if they're like, oh, I actually really liked that, like, now you've lost rapport, and you've lost the opportunity, like because they're either not going to want to work with you, or it's going to be awkward because they want the thing and they feel like you're not going to be able to get it to them because you're judging them for it or whatever, right? And so even aside from that extreme example, it can be really hard to know, are you presenting what somebody really wants and what they really need, unless you do that work of asking questions and getting that engagement, right? You want to be able to have the empathy, to put yourself in their shoes, to know what makes a good home for them, what makes a good property for them based on their own needs. And the only way you get there is by asking and listening way more than talking, right? So it's a simple shift that you can make, but the more that you make it, the better you're able to connect them to properties. But here's the other thing that people miss. I think it's man, I'm gonna forget who said it, but one of the easiest ways to be more interesting to people, where people gravitate towards you, is to be interested in other people, right? Get people talking about themselves, about their family, about their job, about their kids, about their life. And the craziest thing happens where they actually find you more interesting. It builds rapport with you and attracts them to you, even though all you're doing is listening to them, right? So it's both for the practical reason of, you got to understand what they need in the property, but there's also this reason of, like, helping them to trust you as a salesperson who can help them. It's a lot easier if you're asking questions and learning more about them and their needs, right?
Exactly. It's the basics of rapport, building rapport, for sure. I think that might have been Dale Carnegie that said that, but
that sounds right. That sounds right.
We'll double check. Absolutely, Zach. You're right on the money with that.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So that encapsulates our idea then of thou shalt not lead tours. Okay, so that's our first commandment. Let's go to our next one. Thou shalt not use scripts. Go ahead and dive into that one for me.
Leads right into from what you were just talking about, which is letting them talk. There is a myth out there. We need to do some myth busting today on Real Estate Growth Hackers. And that is, we need to bust this myth wide open, that there exists this book of scripts. Like, in every situation, you will have every answer, the perfect words, the perfect response for every opportunity in the real estate business. No, it doesn't exist, because there's no cookie. It's not a cookie cutter situation. The people are different. They're in different areas of, different parts of their life. They're looking for different things. They have different personalities. It's like you said, one person may look at a home and say, oh, and the other one's, this is exactly what I was looking for. Great. Okay. You want to be in the moment, be asking those questions, as you mentioned, listening to what they say. And the only way to do that is by being focused, being present, and being 100% giving them your full attention. If you have a script, what happens? You're in your head, it kind of goes back to the tour thing, right? You've been on a tour where you thought, oh, wow, this person has done this tour 8 million times. On your left, you will go to Disney World, they are obviously reading a script. Right. People pick up on that. That's a very different dynamic than a conversation. And you want to be having selling conversations when you're showing property. You're asking questions, they're giving you responses, you're listening. You are not doing the role play that, XYZ real estate company says, come work with us. We've got all the answers. We're going to train you so you will be the amazing selling machine. No, that doesn't work. Save your time and money. You're going to be spending a lot of your money on being trained a certain way. And guess what? There are a lot of other people that are trained a certain way, and they train the personality out of you. The other thing to think about is the world is, the entire universe. They're not your prospective clients, right? The people that you are going to be easy for you to work with and you're going to be most effective with are the people who resonate with your true personality. Not, hey, hi, I'm putting on my real estate persona today. No, you want to be. And the other thing that happens is, as you know, when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with properties, lots of things can happen, right? And they're not all accounted for in scripts. So if you don't have that, the dog just started, is chasing the cat around, whatever. If you don't react to that because you're staying in your, script mode and this was not on the script, you're never going to build rapport. You're not going to connect with these prospects, and you want them to trust you. And the way to trust you is by doing what we said, asking questions, listening to their responses, making that connection. And that's not going to come from a formula. That's going to come from you. Now, I'm not saying, education is really important. You want to know the market, you want to know the property, all of those things. You're doing that. We're assuming that. But what the myth we're breaking is that it's one size fits all, that this approach, that there can be, I have the formula. The formula doesn't exist because every situation is different and every group of prospects is dramatically different.
Yeah. And I think that's key, right? So the idea that there is a script where it's like, these are the words. And if you say the words, you get the sale, right? Like that idea just isn't ever the case. Right. But I think there is a use for scripts for some of these dialogues, at least if you understand the purpose, which is these are the kinds of words that might be useful, right? Where you think through scenarios and you're doing the role play, not because you expect it to go exactly a certain way, but you're doing the role play to practice that habit of, okay, they responded this way. Am I aware of a good question to follow up with? Am I practicing the skill of diving deeper? So like there is some use to, especially I think, for somebody who's brand new, right? To have some ideas of like, oh, here's some ways that these sales conversations sometimes go. But I think the key is exactly like you said, it's not by any means, you can't follow it like it is literally a script. Like you're not playing out the part in a movie and a TV show. You're not just reading your lines. If you do it that way, it's always going to fall on deaf ears, right? It's not going to work out. I mean, in that same vein, do you have a way that you'd recommend that somebody gets up and running, that like they could start to learn how to do this dialogue? And maybe somebody's brand new to sales and they're not used to having these questions, and that's why they're falling back on scripts, right? Do you have advice for somebody like that of what you would do to get started?
Well, first of all, the more you can get out there, the better, right? So volunteer, just say, hey, I'll help you out with your somebody else in your office, your top producer. Right. I will put the signs out for you. I will come to you. So being in their orbit and seeing how they respond. Now you want to remember, don't pretend. It's another one of the commandments. Thou shalt not covet. I think it's number 7. Thou shalt not covet thy top producer's style, because that also is kind of the same thing where new agents come in and the broker says, okay, this guy is doing a really good job. Just hang out with him and do what he's doing. Right. And he has some sort of signature, happy dance or whatever it is he does. And all of a sudden you're doing the happy dance. And it's just like, no, you dress like him, you act like, no, that's not what we want. It's always a good idea. Just the more, more you're in those selling opportunities, great. Help out at the open house. Listen to the conversations. Notice what people talk about. Notice what they gravitate towards. Absolutely. Also, you become that looky-loo that goes to all the other, see other, see how other agents who may not even be in your office, how they show properties. See how, those sort of situations, even it's and a non-real estate. It's notice, when you go to, buy clothes, how do they, what's the dynamic? The sales exchange is very similar. And we're going to have some specifics that are industry specific, but as far as the building rapport and asking questions and following up, all those things are very, very similar in every different field. It's just how we pull that back to us and notice, kind of how you like to be sold to, that sort of works with you, then you can replicate that. What I am afraid of, and I have unfortunately seen and heard, is that literal, when you say this, I say this. When you say, But however, like you said, there are certain words, and I believe in, showing selling words for sure. Words that sell. Absolutely. But those are individual words, and those are things to pick out, and you use them how you feel comfortable, because that's going to make your prospects feel comfortable. And that's the name of the game. You want them comfortable with you, trusting you, and you want them to feel like they can express both their positive feelings and their negative feelings, because what you don't want is somebody who feels like, wow, you're perfect, and I'm just going to be like, oh, I love it, okay, great, but they get in the car like, oh, I hated that place. You don't want that, right? You want them to feel comfortable with you so they can express their, because then you can move on. You don't have to show them 30 properties. You guys can both get to the end property that's perfect for them faster if they're comfortable saying what they like and what they don't like.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And to the vein of like being able to speak in a way that you're comfortable with, act in a way that you're comfortable with. One of the things that I've done in the past is I've helped people in various parts of my career put together like webinars, right, where they have a way of talking through a topic, ultimately trying to lead towards some sort of sale, right? And that is much less of an interactive sort of sales process than what we're talking about here. But one of the things that still rings true on that is that there are a lot of different people who teach how to do webinars, and so there's these different models for how you might do a webinar, right? And what I've found is that what matters most for the success of somebody being able to do that kind of a sales presentation, it's so much more about if they're comfortable with the process rather than any one of those methods being better than the other, right? If you're confident doing it in this way, that's going to work much better for you than if you try and do it the way that somebody else is saying, hey, this is better or whatever, right? It's way more about, what do you bring to the table? Are you confident in that process? Do you feel good in that exchange? Because if you're using somebody else's tactics and they don't feel right for you, you may not even realize it. You may be saying the exact words. You may be trying to say them the exact way, and yet it doesn't work for you because there's like the subconscious thing that comes across and sabotages that process where you detect it, the other person detects it, and something goes weird, right? So it has to be definitely that you're engaging who you actually are and being authentic there, because if not, it's gonna fall apart. And I love that we got a bonus commandment in there.
Exactly.
But awesome.
Got one free.
and that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that they kind of go together, right? Thou shalt not use scripts, and it is kind of a similar idea to, thou shalt not covet somebody else's tactics or whatever, right?
Exactly.
It's very similar.
And it goes back to what you talked about earlier, and that is, you may be good at a certain aspect of all of this, and great, work that. Perfect. Right. You're the networker, go for it.
Right.
However, everybody has to master the show, because ultimately all roads lead to showing the property, which is why this is so key. That, I feel like there's so many people who do really well at another aspect, but when you actually have your prospect at the property, you need to make the connection. And that's what we're focusing on.
Yeah, perfect. And that actually that leads next, or really great, into our next commandment that we're going to talk about, which is thou shalt engage all 5 of the prospect senses, right? So we're talking about nailing that showing. I think I'm guessing, based on how this sounds, that you've already dropped some hints along the road about this concept, about engaging the senses. So why don't you dive into that a little bit more? How do we leverage this? How do we engage the senses?
We want our showings to be interactive, right? So
Right.
we're asking questions, and we're also giving directions. So as soon as we open the door, we say, "Oh, just turn to your left." Okay, so automatically we're saying we're gonna guide them. They're ultimately in charge, but we're
Right.
going to give them some directions. Or go ahead and feel how smooth this this countertop is, the quartz countertop, whatever, mixing the materials. Let them engage their senses, because you want to give them a little taste of what life is going to be for them in that property, which is why you do that, what we talked about earlier, the mental move-in. So you say, think about how your couch will fit right along this wall. Now they're thinking their couch, as opposed to what a lot of people do, which is, oh my gosh, isn't this staged so nicely? Isn't this gorgeous? It's gorgeous. And we're, oh, wow.
Right.
No. Okay, that's fine. But it's not a museum. This is going to be someone's home. They are going to live there. So we want them to think of their furniture there. So the way we do that is engage their senses. That also helps them stay focused, and it prevents them from thinking, well, what are we having for dinner? What am I going shopping later? No, we want them in the moment, because we want them to remember the property, positive or negative. What we don't want is to have to go back, bring somebody back to the same property 3 times, and then they say, I actually don't like it.
Right.
If you show it to them once and engage their senses, they're really going to get a taste. They're going to be able to test drive this for their life. Does it work or does it not work? If it doesn't work, it's not a loss for you. You've eliminated that. Great. You're getting one step closer to the ultimate property which they want to buy, right? So what we're doing is we're thinking about, even when you walk into the kitchen and we think, oh, can't you just smell the turkey coming out of that oven? Ooh, so now we're smelling, even though you've just mentioned it and we don't smell the turkey. When you mention it, you suggest it. It's the power of suggestion. Now all of a sudden they're doing it. So tasting, smelling, you think about, oh, this carpet has such a great pad. Think of how nice it'll be to get up in the morning and feel that. Ooh, and think of how nice it'll be to sit here and have your coffee on this deck overlooking the redwoods. Ooh, all of a sudden we're putting ourselves in that situation, right? We're touching things. We're, I'll feel this finish on this wall. I'll, feel the height of, the weight of these curtains, whatever it is. We're engaging all their senses because we're getting them really focused on the property, and they're thinking of themselves there. Does it work for them? Is this the vision that they want? Great. Is it not? Okay, no problem. Eliminate that, move on. The way we do that is engaging all 5 of their senses and using sensory words, talking about, oh, smelling, touch this, go ahead and think of, oh, wouldn't it taste great? Oh, can't you see, this beautiful wood burning fire? Won't it be nice to huddle up with the family and have a warm cup of cocoa in your hand? Now we're touching the cocoa, we're tasting the cocoa, we're engaging them. They're going to remember that. They know what that living room looks like.
And it's amazing. I mean, the way that our senses work in terms of activating memory, activating this part, like how you think and how you perceive things, is so powerful. One of the things, this is one of those interesting things for me, growing up, because of what my grandma did. I think she worked for a while for either a company that worked with M&M Mars or worked directly with M&M Mars. I forget. But anyway, because of that connection, she got free tickets to Disneyland every year. And so our whole family, my cousins, and my family and my grandma, we'd all go to Disneyland every year. And so I developed like this really intense memories around just the way that things smelled. And it's like, even today, if something smells similar to the way that like as you're coming into the Pirates of the Caribbean and the way that the water smells coming out of that room with like the mixture of the air conditioning and all of that, like I will smell that smell in other places just for whatever reason where it happens to smell similar. And it's like I'm instantly taken back to the Pirates of the Caribbean and all the good memories that I've had going to Disneyland with my family. And it's simply because of a smell, right? And
it's amazing. Yeah.
And that kind of power can be, leveraged for all of this stuff. One of the things that you mentioned as well that stands out to me is you asking the questions toward the beginning lets you know what senses to pull in, right? If you find out that this is somebody who doesn't cook very much, maybe as a family, they order in more often than they cook, then you're probably not going to be leveraging the smells of the kitchen. You're going to be talking about, maybe they entertain more. And so you're going to say, imagine the sound of everybody enjoying this nice open area, or sharing a good meal together and eating from your favorite places around this easy to entertain on island or whatever, right? You're going to be adapting everything that you just said based on what you've already learned, because you're not leading tours, you're asking questions, right? You're getting that engagement. So you're going to know what senses actually make sense to dive into based on the other research that you've done through asking questions and really getting that feedback. And yet, when you can connect those ideas, that's where it's going to really come together and be super powerful, right? Where you can you could say, I know what things to really pull in and make real for them, because it's going to matter, right? Where you could talk about, you could talk about the idea of having your family come together. Or you could talk about the ideas of entertaining, or you could talk about, maybe it's the sound of their children and their children's family coming. Maybe it's, grandparents, and one of the things that matters to them is having a space to bring their family together, right? And so you could bring in all of those realities for people with smell and sound and touch and taste and bring them all together so that they really can feel and live that experience and tell, does this feel like a good fit for me, right?
Exactly. And that will be impactful and that will be memorable for them.
Right.
So then when they go home, it's not, which one was that? Was that the one with the yellow kitchen? Because which can happen, you look at a lot of, so you show somebody a lot of properties, they all meld together. No, if you've engaged their senses, they're going to remember the specific property because you've already built all those cues in. They will tell you how to sell them. You just have to ask and you have to listen. And also brings the last point home that, the same property represents very different things for different prospects. So it's your job to ask those questions and then translate the property according to them, according to how they want to live.
Yeah. And what I love about, doing that process through the senses is that there's a certain element there where it sidesteps some of the sort of the logical questions where people say, I want this thing present, or I want this present, right? Where they might say, I need this kind of room. But when you dive in and you actually go through the process of engaging the senses, I imagine that there are times where the way that home naturally pulls their ability to experience it through the senses, right? Through that sort of reality, there might be homes that stand out in ways that they didn't necessarily expect, because now they're imagining a future in that home that they weren't necessarily picturing when they were just listing off their list of requirements, right? Because people aren't necessarily thinking of all the ways that they're going to live in the home. But once you actually try and paint that picture where you listen to what's important to them and why, and then you connect it to what that experience might actually be in that home, just like you said, it becomes about more than just the yellow kitchen or the blue kitchen. It becomes more about what are you going to do there? How are you going to live there? And that becomes real through the senses. It's not really as real just through, the concept of this feature is here, right? It's what do you do with it? And how does it engage you?
Exactly. It's not that, nobody really wants to live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. They want to live, they want to live in a house that has plenty of space for them, that has an office. It's very different than the, click, what boxes am I ticking? Very different dynamic.
Exactly. Perfect. So awesome. So we just dove into 3 of the commandments that you have in showing superpowers. Are there 10 commandments? Is that
there are 10 commandments, just like Moses on the mountain. I get 10.
There you go. Sounds good. So if people want to dive in and get all the rest of the commandments, we actually covered 4 today. We might have even sprinkled in some hints about some other ones I'm betting, but if people want to get access to that, if you want to support Real Estate Growth Hackers, you want to support our show in the process, you can go to realestategrowthhackers.com/showing superpower. It is available on Amazon as well. That's where that link should take you. But is there anywhere else where people should go, or is Amazon just the best place to go and get the book?
Amazon's the best place, and go through the Real Estate Growth Hackers, support the community for sure.
Perfect. Sounds good. So all of those details should be in the show notes on the blog post that comes out with this post as well. If you need to look it up directly, again, it's Roseann Galvin Showing Superpower. The full title is The Real Estate Agent's Guide to Creating Bespoke Property Presentations, Faster Commissions, and Lifelong Clients. So there you go, Roseann. Thank you so much for coming on. Are there any last words that you'd like to leave people with in terms of how to take this information, put it into action, and get the most value out of this process that we just talked about?
Absolutely. First of all, if you've come to real estate, you are in a great place. Be patient. It does take time. Wherever you are in the game, you can find what works for you. It's very different things, as you mentioned, for different people. So look for what resonates with you and mine that, work that angle, and good luck to you. And don't forget to spend some time thinking about how you're actually going to show. And then develop that superpower and be in the game for the long run. Awesome. So I appreciate the time, Zach, and all the good work that you're doing, and keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming on. And until next time, everybody, thanks for stopping by and engaging with us here at the Real Estate Growth Hackers Show. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Growth Hacker Show. Remember, done is better than perfect. To turn the marketing ideas and tactics you just learned into real growth for your real estate business, visit us at realestategrowthhackers.com. If you like this episode, consider sharing it with another real estate professional who could benefit from the information. Or maybe you'd like to subscribe to the show to never miss an episode. And you can leave a rating or review on iTunes with your biggest takeaway, helping this show to reach and help more people just like you. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.